Plaza Hotel in Manhattan glittered like a damn jewel box that October night in 2025. Chandeliers dripped light onto the marble floors, jazz floated from a quartet in the corner, and the air smelled like champagne and money. Old money, new money. Didn't matter as long as it flowed. I, Lucas Hayes, stepped through the double doors, tugging at the collar of my black Tom Ford suit. At 35, with a net worth clocking in at $2 billion, I was no stranger to these gigs. Charity galas where the elite of New York pretended to care about the less fortunate while sipping $300 a bottle bubbly. My assistant, Mia Carter, had dragged me here, muttering something about optics for Hayes Ventures. I didn't argue. A room full of power players was my playground. The place was packed. Wall Street sharks in tailored blazers, tech bros in sneakers worth more than my first car, and women in gowns that screamed designer labels. I grabbed a flute of champagne from a passing tray, the cold glass biting my fingers, and scanned the crowd. Small talk buzzed around me. Some hedge fund guy droning about crypto. A woman in pearls laughing too loud at a bad joke. I nodded along, my practiced smile in place, but my mind was already drifting to the next deal, the next win. Then the crowd shifted, like a curtain pulling back, and there she was. Dr. Amara Ellis stood 20 feet away, and the world tilted. She wore a deep blue gown that hugged her like a second skin, the fabric catching the light with every move, showing off curves I'd once memorized in the dark. Her hair was shorter now, styled in soft curls that framed her face and grazed the bare slope of her neck, smooth brown skin glowing under the chandeliers. She was mid-conversation, head tilted, lips curved in a smile that hit me like a freight train. 5 years since I'd last seen her, and she was still the most beautiful thing in any room. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she stood, shoulders back, chin up, radiating a quiet power that made everyone else look small. I froze, champagne halfway to my mouth, my pulse thudding in my ears. Amara Ellis. My Amara. Or at least she used to be. The woman I'd loved and lost, the one whose laugh used to fill my mornings, whose voice could cut through my bullshit like a blade. I'd heard whispers about her, founder of Horizon Learning, some big-deal educational psych firm out of Atlanta. But seeing her here in the flesh was a gut punch I wasn't ready for. Our eyes locked across the room, and for one endless second, time stopped. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, and I saw it. Recognition, maybe pain, maybe something else. Then she turned back to her group, leaving me stranded in the crowd. "Lucas, you okay?" Mia's voice snapped me out of it. She stood beside me, her blonde bob sleek under the lights, her tablet glowing with whatever schedule she was obsessing over. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," I muttered, downing the champagne in one gulp. The bubbles burned going down. "What's she doing here?" Mia followed my gaze, then tapped her screen. "Dr. Amara Ellis, keynote speaker tonight. Runs Horizon Learning, some groundbreaking education thing for urban kids. Why? You know her?" "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "I used to." Before Mia could grill me, I handed her the empty glass and started moving. I had to talk to her. 5 years of silence, 5 years of regret. And now she was right there. The crowd parted as I wove through, my dress shoes clicking against the marble, my heart hammering like I was 30 again, fumbling to impress her at that Brooklyn gallery. I rehearsed lines in my head. "Hey, good to see you. You look amazing. I'm sorry." But none of them felt right. Then I got close enough to catch the faint jasmine of her perfume, and everything went to hell. Travis Knight beat me to her. That slick bastard, my old partner turned rival, slid up beside Amara like he owned the place. He was 33, all sharp jawline and sharper ambition, his gray suit cut to perfection. He leaned in, one hand resting low on her waist, whispering something that made her laugh. a low, throaty sound that used to be mine. His cologne, some woody crap, hit me from 5 feet away, and his eyes flicked to me, smug as hell. "Lucas," he said, loud enough to draw attention. "Didn't expect you here? Slumming it with the do-gooders?" I forced a grin, teeth gritted. "Travis. Always a pleasure." Amara turned, her gaze landing on me again, and this time it held, steady, unreadable. "Lucas," she said, her voice smooth but cool, like a breeze off the Hudson. "Been a while?" "Yeah," I said, shoving my hands in my pockets to keep them from shaking. "You look incredible." She raised an eyebrow, a ghost of a smile tugging her lips. "Thanks. You haven't changed much." It wasn't a compliment. I could hear the edge in it, the memory of me bailing on her for deals and deadlines. Before I could respond, someone else stepped in, and my night got worse. Sasha Reed, Amara's ride-or-die best friend, materialized like a goddamn bouncer. She was a knockout in a red dress that hugged every curve, her braids swept up, but her glare could have melted steel. Sasha and I had history, mostly her hating me after I broke Amara's heart. "Well, well," she said, crossing her arms. "If it isn't the King of Wall Street, what do you want, Hayes?" "Just saying hi," I said, keeping my tone light. "No harm in that, right?" "Hi?" she snorted, stepping between me and Amara. "You don't get to waltz in here like nothing happened. She's done with you, moved on, built something real. Go play with your money somewhere else." The words stung, sharp and true. I glanced at Amara, hoping for a crack in her armor, but she just watched, her face a mask. Travis smirked, his hand still on her, and I felt the heat crawl up my neck. Jealousy, shame, all of it boiling together. "Sasha, come on," I said, voice low. "I'm not here to start trouble." "Too late," she snapped. "You started it 5 years ago, when you ditched her for your precious empire. She doesn't need you now. None of us do." The air went thick, heads turning our way. I could have pushed back, told her I'd changed, that I'd spent 5 years kicking myself. But the truth was, I didn't have the words. Not yet. Amara finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "Sasha, it's fine," she said, touching her friend's arm. "Lucas was just leaving, right?" It wasn't a question. Her eyes met mine again, and this time there was no mistaking it. Distance, finality, a wall I'd built brick by brick. "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. "Good seeing you, Amara." I turned on my heel, the jazz fading into a dull hum as I headed for the exit. Travis's laugh chased me out, low and mocking, and Sasha's glare burned into my back. Outside, the Manhattan night hit me. Cold air off Central Park, horns blaring from Fifth Avenue, lights blurring through a haze I didn't want to admit was tears. I leaned against a lamppost, the champagne sour in my gut, and replayed that look in Amara's eyes. 5 years ago, she'd been mine, my heart, my home. Now she was a stranger who'd outgrown me, surrounded by people who'd killed to keep me away. I'd made it, hadn't I? Billionaire, magazine covers, the whole American dream bullshit. But standing there, alone in the city I'd conquered, I knew the truth. I'd never stopped loving her, and she'd moved on without me. The gala lights glowed behind me, her laugh echoing in my head, and I wondered if I'd lost her for good, or if there was still a shot to fix the biggest mistake of my life. Hey, if that clash of past and present got your heart racing, stick around. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Think I've got a chance to win her back, or am I toast? This is just the start, and trust me, it's gonna get wild from here. 5 years before that gut-wrenching night at the plaza, I wasn't a billionaire yet. Just a 30-year-old hustler with big dreams in a small office in Midtown. It was May 2020, and Brooklyn was alive with that spring buzz, street vendors hawking iced coffee, kids laughing on stoops, the faint thrum of a bass line spilling from an open window. I'd ended up at this hole-in-the-wall art gallery in Williamsburg, dragged there by Mia Carter, who was still my assistant back then, though she barely had a title yet. "You need culture, Lucas," she'd said, shoving a flyer in my face. "All you do is work." I rolled my eyes but went anyway. Hayes Ventures was just a startup then, and I figured a night out wouldn't kill me. The gallery was a narrow space, brick walls lined with canvases splashed in colors I didn't get. The air smelled like paint and espresso from a pop-up bar in the corner, and a lo-fi beat hummed through a cheap speaker. I stood there, nursing a plastic cup of cheap rosé, feeling out of place in my button-down and jeans. The crowd was a mix. Hipsters in thrifted jackets, artsy types with nose rings, a few suits like me who looked equally lost. I was halfway through texting Mia some snarky excuse to bounce when I saw her. Amara Ellis stood alone in front of a massive abstract painting, swirls of red and gold bleeding into each other like a sunset on fire. She wore a sleeveless silk dress, soft gray, the kind that slipped over her curves like water, leaving one shoulder bare. Her skin glowed under the warm gallery lights, a rich brown that caught every flicker, and her hair spilled in loose curls past her shoulders, wild and free. She tilted her head, studying the canvas, her lips parted just enough to show she was lost in it. I didn't know art, didn't care about it, but something about her pulled me like gravity. My phone slid back into my pocket, forgotten. I crossed the room before I could talk myself out of it, the rosé sloshing in my cup. Up close, she smelled like jasmine, light, sweet, the kind of scent that lingers. "Hey," I said, voice cracking like a damn teenager. "What's this one supposed to mean?" She turned, and those eyes, dark, sharp, alive, hit me full force. Her smile came slow, teasing, like she knew I was out of my depth. "It's chaos," she said, her voice low and warm, like honey over gravel. "Beautiful, messy chaos. What do you think?" I glanced at the painting, then back at her. "I think it's expensive?" I winced as soon as I said it. "Smooth, Lucas, real smooth." She laughed, a sound that rolled through me like a wave. "Fair enough. Not an art guy, huh?" "Not even close," I admitted, grinning despite myself. "I'm Lucas, by the way. Lucas Hayes." "Amara Ellis," she said, offering her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm against mine, and I held on a beat too long. "So Lucas Hayes, what brings a non-art guy to a place like this?" "Bad decisions and a pushy assistant," I said, nodding toward Mia, who was flirting with the barista across the room. "You?" "Curiosity," she replied, her eyes flicking back to the painting. "And a break from grading papers. I'm a psych grad student, NYU." "Smart and artsy," I said, leaning against the wall. "I'm just a finance nerd trying to keep up." She smirked, crossing her arms, the silk shifting against her skin. "Finance, huh? Wall Street dreams?" "Something like that," I said. "Building my own thing. Hayes Ventures. Small now, but it's gonna be big." Her eyebrows lifted, but not in that fake awe I'd seen from other women chasing a paycheck. "Big how?" she asked. "What's the point?" The question threw me. Most people just nodded when I bragged about work. No one dug deeper. "To prove I can," I said after a pause. "To not be the guy anyone can push around." She studied me, her gaze peeling back layers I didn't know I had. "That's a start," she said. "But what's it for when you're done proving it?" I didn't have an answer, and she didn't push. Instead, we talked about the painting, about Brooklyn, about the Ethiopian spot she swore had the best injera in the city. The crowd thinned, the rosé ran dry, but we stayed, parked on a bench by the window, the night stretching out like it belonged to us. She told me about her family in Atlanta. Her mom, Dr. Amara Ellis, a badass engineer. Her dad, a high school principal who'd shaped half the neighborhood. Her grandma, who'd marched with Dr. King. Her world was rich, rooted, nothing like my scrappy climb from a Queen's walk-up. "Sounds like you come from legends," I said, genuinely hooked. "Makes my hustle feel kinda shallow." "Don't sell yourself short," she said, nudging me with her elbow. Her touch sent a jolt through me, quick and hot. "You're building something. Just figure out why." That night turned into coffee the next week, then dinner at that Ethiopian joint she loved, injera and spicy dorawat, her laughing as I fumbled with the bread, her fingers brushing mine to show me how. We'd sit there for hours, the neon sign buzzing outside, her teaching me to slow down, to taste life instead of chasing it. One night we ended up at her tiny studio in Bed-Stuy, a fifth-floor walk-up with creaky floors and walls crammed with books. She put on Maxwell, Ascension filling the space, and we danced, slow and close, her body swaying against mine. My hands settled on her hips, the silk of her shirt thin under my fingers, her breath warm against my neck as she hummed along. "Your trouble, Lucas Hayes," she whispered, her lips grazing my ear, sending heat down my spine. "Only the good kind," I shot back, pulling her closer. She laughed, and I swear it was the best sound I'd ever heard. Better than any deal closing, any check cashing. Weeks turned to months, and we were a unit. Her calm to my storm, her brain to my hustle. We'd walk the High Line at dusk, her hand in mine, dreaming up ways to mix my money with her smarts. "Imagine this," she'd say, her eyes lighting up. "Community centers, scholarships, real change, not just profit." I'd nod, caught up in her fire, seeing my work as more than a scorecard for the first time. One night, we were cooking in her place, pasta bubbling, Aretha Franklin crooning on her old speaker. She'd had a rough day. One of her kids at the youth center she volunteered at was struggling, and her eyes were still puffy from crying. But there she was, chopping garlic, hips swaying to Respect, refusing to let the weight win. I watched her, the strength in her soft edges, and it hit me hard. "I love you," I blurted, the words tumbling out over the hiss of the stove. She stopped, knife hovering, then turned. Her smile broke wide, the one that could light up Brooklyn. "Took you long enough," she said, crossing the room. She cupped my face, her thumbs brushing my jaw, and kissed me. Slow, deep, tasting like salt and promise. "I've loved you for weeks." We were unstoppable then, or so I thought. Dinners turned to weekend trips upstate, her head on my shoulder as we drove through the Catskills, leaves blazing red. We'd fight sometimes, sharp, fast debates about purpose or priorities, but even those felt right, like we were sharpening each other. I didn't see the cracks forming, didn't notice how my phone started buzzing more, how Hayes Ventures was pulling me away. A missed dinner here, a late night there. I told myself it was temporary, just until the next deal. Amara smiled through it, left notes in my bag. "Chase it, but come back to me." I thought she'd always wait. I was wrong. That fire we lit in the gallery? It was burning bright, but I was about to let it flicker out. By the summer of 2022, Hayes Ventures wasn't a scrappy startup anymore. It was a machine, churning out deals and stacking cash faster than I could count. I was 32, riding high on the thrill of it all, boardrooms buzzing when I walked in, my name popping up in Forbes's 30 under 40 lists, clients begging for 5 minutes of my time. 2 years with Amara Ellis had softened me some. Her fire, her heart, the way she saw through my bullshit. But the grind was calling louder every day. New York hummed outside my midtown office window, a gray sprawl of ambition, and I was hooked on chasing it. I didn't see how it was pulling me away from her. It started small, missed dinners, late replies, a quick, "Sorry, babe" text when I'd promised to be home. Amara was patient at first, her grad school grind at NYU keeping her busy too. She'd leave voicemails I'd listen to on repeat. "Hey, don't work too hard, okay? I made extra curry if you're hungry later." Her voice was a lifeline, warm and steady, cutting through the chaos of my days. We'd still have our moments. Weekend mornings in her Bed-Stuy studio, sunlight spilling through the blinds, her curled against me on that lumpy couch, Maxwell crooning in the background. I'd trace the curve of her shoulder, her skin soft under my fingers, and think, this is enough. But then my phone would buzz, another email, another meeting, and I'd slip away. The first real crack came in July. Amara's birthday, her 28th, rolled around, and she'd planned a quiet dinner with her family at their favorite spot in Harlem, a soul food joint called Sylvia's. I'd promised to be there, even booked the day off, imagining her smile when I showed up with flowers. But then a client in Chicago dangled a $20 million deal, real estate, prime location, the kind of score that could put Hayes Ventures on the map. Just this one, I told myself, texting Amara from O'Hare Airport. "Babe, I'm so sorry, big meeting, I'll make it up to you, love you." I sent roses too, red ones, thinking they'd smooth it over. She called me that night, voice tight through the crackle of the line. "You missed it, Lucas," she said. No hello, no warm-up. "My mom asked where you were. My dad saved you a plate." I leaned against the hotel window, Chicago's skyline blinking back at me, guilt gnawing my gut. "I know, I messed up," I said. "This deal, it's huge, Amara. For us." "For us?" She laughed, sharp and hollow. "You didn't even ask if I wanted to celebrate tomorrow. You just left." "I'll fly back first thing," I promised, pacing the room. "Dinner, wherever you want, my treat." She sighed, long and heavy. "Okay," she said finally, "but don't think flowers fix this." They didn't. I took her to a fancy spot in the Village the next night. Dim lights, overpriced steak, waiters in bow ties. She wore a black dress, simple but stunning, the fabric clinging just right, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. We laughed some, clinked glasses, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I reached for her hand across the table, her fingers warm but stiff. "I'm here now," I said, squeezing. "That's what counts, right?" She pulled back, slow, her gaze dropping to her plate. "It's not about now, Lucas. It's about when you're not." That stung, but I brushed it off. She forgave me, or tried to, and we kept going. Fall hit, and Hayes Ventures exploded. New office in Flatiron, staff doubling, my phone a constant buzz of notifications. I'd cancel plans last minute, stuck in meetings with suits who'd flown in from LA or Boston. Amara stopped leaving notes. Her texts got shorter. "See you when I see you." I'd stumble into her place late, the smell of her curry still lingering, and find her asleep on the couch. Books splayed around her. I'd kiss her forehead, her breath soft against my lips, and promise myself I'd do better. But I didn't. One night in October, we were at my new condo, downtown, all glass and leather, a far cry from her cozy walk-up. I'd just closed a deal worth $50 million, adrenaline still pumping, and I was halfway through a story about outsmarting some hedge fund jerk when she cut me off. "Lucas," she said, standing by the window, arms crossed. The city lights painted her in gold, her sweater hugging her frame, but her voice was ice. "I'm tired of competing with your phone." I glanced up from the screen, another email pinging in. "What?" "I'm right here," I said, setting it down too late. "You're not," she snapped, turning to face me. "You're half listening, half somewhere else. I don't even know who I'm talking to anymore." "Come on, Amara," I said, standing, my voice sharper than I meant. "I'm building something, for us, for the future. You said chase my dreams." "I did," she said, stepping closer, her eyes blazing. "But I didn't say leave me behind." The air went heavy, her words slicing through the buzz in my head. I wanted to fight back, tell her she didn't get it, that this was how you win in this city. But she looked so damn tired, and it stopped me cold. "I'll cut back," I said softer. "I swear." She nodded, but the doubt in her eyes stuck with me. I meant it then. In that moment, her standing there, the woman who'd danced with me to Maxwell, who'd loved me when I was nobody. But promises are cheap when your phone won't shut up. The breaking point hit in December. Amara's dad was retiring after 30 years as a high school principal in Atlanta. A big deal, a community legend hanging up his hat. She'd begged me to come, her voice bright over the phone weeks earlier. "It's my family, Lucas. They want you there." I'd booked the flight, packed a suit, even picked out a bottle of bourbon for her old man. Then Travis Knight, my partner at Hayes Ventures, dropped a bombshell. $100 million deal in London, teetering, needing me to close it. "You're the face, man," he said, clapping my shoulder. "We lose this, we're screwed." I called Amara from JFK, rain streaking the terminal windows. "Babe, I've got to go to London," I said, wincing at the silence on her end. "It's one night. I'll fly to Atlanta right after." "You promised," she said, voice flat. "This isn't just dinner, Lucas. It's my dad." "I know," I said, desperate. "I'll make it work. I'll figure it out." "You always say that," she whispered, and the line clicked dead. London was a blur. Handshakes, whiskey, a signed contract that felt like gold. I landed back in New York 2 days later, buzzing with victory, and drove straight to my condo, expecting her to be there. The place was dark. Too dark. Her key sat on the counter, a note beside it. "I can't keep fighting for us alone. Goodbye, Lucas." I stared at it, the words blurring, then sank onto the couch, the leather cold against my back. Rain hammered the windows, the city roaring outside, but inside it was silent. Dead. She was gone. I'd gambled on her waiting, on her strength holding us up, and I'd lost. Travis called that night. "Hell of a win, Hayes." But I didn't answer. The bourbon for her dad sat unopened, mocking me. Amara wasn't coming back, and I'd been too damn blind to see it coming. 2 years of fire snuffed out, and I'd lit the match myself. The 5 years after Amara Ellis walked out of my condo were a whirlwind, a dizzying climb to the top that left me dizzy with nothing to hold on to. It was late 2022 when she left, and by 2025, I'd turned Hayes Ventures into a juggernaut, a name whispered in boardrooms from New York to LA. I was 32 when she slipped away, and at 35, I was a billionaire, $2 billion stacked in accounts, a penthouse on the Upper East Side with views that could make a poet cry, and a life that looked like every hustler's dream. But every night, I'd stand at those floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling below me like a neon quilt, a tumbler of Macallan in my hand, and feel the weight of an emptiness I couldn't name. Success came fast and loud after that December night. Hayes Ventures went from a scrappy outfit to a powerhouse. Real estate deals in Miami, snapping up waterfront condos, tech startups in Austin, begging for my seed money. A merger with a clean energy firm that landed me on Bloomberg's cover, smirking in a navy suit. My phone was a lifeline I couldn't cut. Emails from investors at 3 a.m., texts from my team about some crisis in Tokyo, calls from Mia Carter, my assistant turned COO, keeping the whole circus on track. I'd traded my beat-up hoodies for bespoke Brioni, my scuffed Nikes for loafers that cost more than my first car. The penthouse got the full treatment too. Some designer with a French accent filled it with mid-century furniture, black leather, and steel accents. Architectural Digest shot it for their fall issue, calling it a bachelor's fortress. It was spotless, marble counters gleaming, not a dish in the sink, but it was dead. No curry simmering on the stove, no R&B humming through the air, no Amara sprawled on the couch with a book and that smile that used to light me up. I didn't stay alone long, couldn't really. The women came easy when your name's on magazine covers. Chloe Bennett was the one who stuck around the longest, 26, a model with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass and a body that turned heads from Soho to the Hamptons. She'd saunter into my place in outfits that hugged every curve, little black dresses that barely reached her thighs, or lace slips that left damn near nothing to the imagination. Her perfume was this spicy amber thing, heavy and warm, wrapping around me like a dare. One night, maybe a year after Amara split, early 24, I think, she showed up unannounced, rain streaking her hair, a bottle of Veuve Clicquot in hand. "Rough day on the runway?" she said, kicking off her heels. "Thought you could use some fun." I smirked, letting her in. "You're trouble, Chloe." "Only the best kind," she shot back, popping the cork with a laugh. We ended up on the couch, her straddling me, nails digging into my shoulders as she peeled off my shirt. Her lips brushed my ear, voice low and husky. "You're so tense, Lucas. Let me fix you up." I didn't stop her. Her hands sliding down my chest, her hips pressing into mine, all heat and rhythm. It was good, fast, a blur of skin and breath. But when it was over, she rolled off, stretching out beside me, and I just stared at the ceiling, my pulse slowing to nothing. She'd stay sometimes, her blonde hair fanned across my silk sheets, her breathing soft in the dark, but I'd lie awake, the city's hum mocking me. "You're not here," she said once, maybe 6 months in, pulling on her jeans after another late night. "Even when you're with me, you're somewhere else." "Who is she?" "No one," I lied, avoiding her green eyes. She smirked, unconvinced, and grabbed her bag. "Call me when you figure it out," she said, the door clicking shut behind her. Chloe wasn't wrong. I kept everyone at arm's length, a habit I'd picked up after Amara. Others floated through, a lawyer with a killer smile, an influencer who loved my rooftop hot tub, a chef who cooked me risotto once and left her number. They were distractions, pretty ghosts passing through a life I'd built to stay busy, not to live. Amara's name haunted me like a half-remembered song. I'd catch fragments of her life through the rumor mill, finished her PhD at NYU, moved back to Atlanta, started something called Horizon Learning. A buddy from college mentioned it over beers at a dive bar in the village one night. "Dude, she's killing it down there, some education gig for kids in rough spots." I'd nod, sip my IPA, and steer the conversation to sports or stocks. But her name stuck, a splinter under my skin. I didn't Google her, couldn't face seeing her thriving without me, but I wondered, was she with someone? Did she ever think about those Brooklyn nights? The way we'd dance in her tiny studio, my hands on her hips, her laugh in my ear. I told myself she was better off, that I'd been a chain she'd broken free from, but it didn't stop the dull ache that hit me every time I passed an Ethiopian restaurant or heard Maxwell on the radio. Down in Atlanta, Amara wasn't just getting by. She was building an empire of her own. Horizon Learning was her baby, born from late nights at her parents' old craftsman house on Auburn Avenue, the kind with a wraparound porch and creaky steps. She'd sit out there with a glass of sweet tea, fireflies blinking in the humid dusk, sketching plans on legal pads, trauma-informed teaching, mentorship programs backed by hard data, a way to reach kids the system forgot. Her mom, Dr. Naomi Ellis, a retired engineer with a steel spine, helped her pitch to foundations. Her dad, fresh off his principal gig, called in favors with community leaders. It took off fast. Grants from the Gates Foundation, contracts with Atlanta Public Schools, her name in Ed Week as a rising star. She worked late, her office a mess of books and post-its, but she'd smile through it, knowing every line of code, every lesson plan, was a kid getting a shot. She wasn't alone the whole time either. Marcus Reed came into her life in 23, a lawyer 34 with a quiet charm and a knack for jazz piano. They met at a fundraiser in Midtown, him in a crisp blazer, her in a sundress that caught the light. Over bourbon and Ella Fitzgerald at a lounge off Peachtree, they clicked. Easy talks about law, psych, the South. He'd cook for her, shrimp and grits on Sundays, his kitchen smelling like butter and spice, and they'd dance slow in his loft, his hands steady on her waist. He proposed a year later, under string lights in Piedmont Park, a simple gold ring glinting in his palm. "You're it for me, Amara," he said, voice soft. She said yes, tears in her eyes, but the ring felt heavy. She'd wear it a week, then leave it on her dresser, catching herself staring at it, thinking of Lucas, of Brooklyn, of curry-stained fingers, of a love that burned too bright. Marcus deserved better, she decided. She called it off in 24, handing back the ring over coffee, her voice breaking. "I'm not ready," she said. "I'm sorry." He nodded, too good to argue, and walked away. Sasha Reed, her best friend, no relation to Marcus, was her anchor through it all. Sasha had moved to D.C., climbing the ranks at the Washington Post as an investigative reporter, her braids and sharp wit a staple in the newsroom. They'd talk late, Sasha's voice crackling over FaceTime from her cluttered apartment. "You're a damn queen, Amara," she'd say, sipping wine. "Don't let that Wall Street clown pull you back." Amara laughed it off, but Sasha saw the cracks, how her friend's eyes dulled when Lucas's name slipped out, how she'd rebuilt herself but never fully buried the past. Horizon Learning was her shield, her proof she didn't need him. But some nights, alone with her tea, she'd wonder. In New York, Travis Knight was another thorn. He'd bolted from Hayes Ventures in 23, taking a chunk of our clients to launch Knight Capital. "Just business, man," he'd said over IPAs at a rooftop bar in Chelsea, his Rolex catching the sunset. "You'd do it too." I hated his guts but kept it civil. Rivals with a nod, not a handshake. He was winning out there, his firm snagging headlines, and it ate at me, though I'd never admit it. Mia kept me grounded, her dry humor a lifeline. "You're still the king, Lucas," she'd say, tossing me a coffee across the office. "Let him have his scraps." Then came October 2025, the Plaza Gala. I'd gone for the optics, a chance to schmooze some venture capitalists over champagne and jazz. The room was alive. Suits and sequins, the quartet swinging through Take 5, the air thick with perfume and ambition. I was mid-pitch, some windbag and a tux droning about private equity, when the crowd parted, and there she was, Amara, in that blue gown, her short curls framing her face, her presence a quiet thunderclap. My glass froze halfway to my lips, my heart slamming against my ribs. She was laughing with a group, her voice cutting through the noise, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Travis got to her first, naturally. He slid up, all swagger in his gray suit, his hand settling low on her waist, whispering something that made her smile. My blood boiled, jealousy, raw and ugly, clawing up my throat. I started toward her, legs shaky, but Sasha swooped in, red dress, eyes like daggers, The same Sasha who'd nursed Amara through my mess. "Back off, Hayes," she said, voice a low growl. "She's done with you. Moved on. You don't belong here." "I just want to talk," I said, hands up, but she stepped closer, unyielding. "You don't get to talk," she hissed. "You broke her heart, and she built something better without you. Walk away." The room spun, eyes on us now. I looked past her to Amara. Her gaze met mine, cool and distant, a wall I'd helped raise. "Sasha, it's fine," she said, her hand on her friend's arm. "He's leaving, right, Lucas?" It wasn't a question. It was a shove. I nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, good seeing you." I turned, the jazz fading to a dull roar, Travis's smirk burning into my back as I hit the exit. Outside, the Manhattan night swallowed me. Cold wind off Central Park, horns blaring, lights blurring through a haze I couldn't blink away. I leaned against a lamppost, the champagne sour in my gut, her laugh echoing in my skull. Back at the penthouse, I stood at the window, the skyline a cold constellation. Chloe texted, "Up late? Want company?" But I ignored it, pouring a scotch instead. 5 years of victories, and I'd lost the only thing that ever felt real. Amara was out there, shining without me, and I was drowning in a dark I'd dug myself. But that look in her eyes, not just goodbye, but something else, a flicker, lit a spark I couldn't shake. Maybe it wasn't over. Maybe I still had a shot. The night at the plaza left me reeling, a bruise I couldn't shake. It was late October 2025, and Amara Ellis had walked back into my life, or I'd stumbled into hers like a ghost I couldn't outrun. That blue gown, Travis Knight's smug hand on her waist, Sasha Reed's venom in my face. It played on loop as I stood at my penthouse window, the Upper East Side glowing cold below me. I'd spent 5 years building an empire, but seeing her again, shining without me, cracked something open. I wasn't done with her, not by a long shot, but wanting her back and deserving her were two different games, and I had no playbook for this one. The next morning, I sat in my office at Hayes Ventures, a glass box and Flatiron overlooking the chaos of Fifth Avenue, staring at my laptop. Mia Carter breezed in, her blonde bob sharp as ever, tossing a coffee on my desk. "You look like hell, boss," she said, eyeing me over her tablet. "Rough night at the gala?" "Something like that," I muttered, sipping the black brew, bitter, scalding, just what I needed. "You ever hear of Horizon Learning?" She tapped her screen, not missing a beat. "Yeah. Amara Ellis's gig, right? Education psych firm out of Atlanta. Big on urban kids, trauma stuff. Why?" I leaned back, the leather chair creaking. "I need to see her. Email her. Keep it simple. Good seeing you. Coffee sometime." Mia raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "You sure about this? Last I checked, she wasn't your biggest fan." "Just do it," I said, sharper than I meant. She shrugged and got to work. 2 days later, Amara's reply pinged in, cool, professional, a punch to the gut. "I'm tied up with Horizon's expansion. Maybe in a few weeks." Not a yes, not a no, a polite dodge. I'd take it. I'd waited 5 years. A few weeks was nothing. I didn't sit idle. I dug into Horizon Learning, public talks, articles, anything I could find. She was speaking at a community center in Harlem the next week, some panel on educational equity. I went, no suit this time, just a hoodie and jeans, blending into the back row. The place smelled like old wood and coffee, folding chairs creaking under a mix of teachers, parents, and activists. Amara took the mic, her voice steady and warm, breaking down how trauma screws with learning and how her programs fixed it. Data, stories, hope, wrapped in steel. She wore a blazer over a silk top, the fabric catching the light as she moved, her curls bouncing with every gesture. I couldn't look away. Her fire was brighter now, honed, and it hit me all over again why I'd fallen for her. After, I lingered, catching her as she packed up. "Hey," I said, hands in my pockets, throat tight. "Good talk." She glanced up, surprise flickering in her eyes before they cooled. "Lucas, what are you doing here?" "Learning," I said, nodding at the room. "You're incredible up there." "Thanks," she said, zipping her bag, her tone clipped. "Look, I'm busy." "I know," I cut in. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." She paused, her gaze locking on mine, searching, guarded. "That's a big word for you," she said finally, "but it's 5 years late." "I get that," I said, stepping closer, her jasmine scent hitting me like a memory. "I'm not asking for anything, just a chance to talk." She sighed, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "We'll see," she said, and walked out, leaving me standing there, her heels echoing on the hardwood. It wasn't much, but it was a crack, a start. I didn't push too hard, didn't want to scare her off. Instead, I showed up. Horizon ran a youth mentorship program in Brooklyn, and I volunteered. Tuesday nights, no fanfare, just me and a dozen kids from Bed-Stuy, helping with homework, talking dreams. The center was a concrete box, paint peeling, smelling like sweat and pizza from the delivery guy. Amara dropped by sometimes, clipboard in hand, her presence a quiet jolt. She'd watch me, kneeling by a kid struggling with math, laughing at their jokes, and I'd catch her eyes soften, just a flicker, before she turned away. Sasha wasn't thrilled. She flew up from DC one weekend, cornering me outside the center after a session. "What's your angle, Hayes?" she snapped, her red coat stark against the gray street, braids swinging as she glared. "You think you can waltz back in and play hero?" "No angle," I said, meeting her stare. "I messed up. I know it. I'm trying to be better." "You hurt her," she said, voice low. "She rebuilt herself, and you don't get to undo that." "I don't want to undo it," I said. "I want to deserve it." She studied me, then huffed. "We'll see," she said. Same words as Amara, same guarded edge, and left me on the curb, the Brooklyn night closing in. Then the storm hit. In December, Travis Knight pulled a move. Knight Capital leaked a story to the Wall Street Journal, accusing Hayes Ventures of shady accounting, hinting I'd siphoned funds into offshore accounts. It was bullshit. Travis knew it, but the damage was instant. Stocks tanked, investors panicked, my phone lit up with furious calls. Mia stormed into my office, her face pale. "This is war, Lucas," she said, slamming a printout on my desk. "He's got no proof, but the optics are killing us." I stared at the headline. "Billionaire Hayes under fire." My gut twisting. "Get the lawyers," I said. "We fight this." "We're trying," she said, pacing. "But you need to be in Chicago tomorrow. Biggest shareholders are there, freaking out. You don't show, we're toast." I nodded, mind racing, then froze. Tomorrow was Tuesday. Amara's mom, Dr. Naomi Ellis, had roped me into a Horizon project in Atlanta, a community center launch she'd been planning for months. Amara had mentioned it offhand last week, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. "Mom wants you there, says it's a test. Don't screw it up." Naomi was a force, tall, silver-haired, a retired engineer who'd built bridges literal and figurative. She'd met me once, post-gala, her handshake firm, her gaze saying, "Prove yourself." Chicago or Atlanta, I couldn't do both. I chose Atlanta. Told Mia to handle the shareholders, flew south that morning, landing in a muggy haze. The center was a squat building off MLK Drive, fresh paint and balloons clashing with the gray asphalt. Kids ran around, music blaring. Outcasts' Ms. Jackson thumping from a speaker. Naomi greeted me, her blazer crisp, her smile thin. "You're here," she said, handing me a stack of flyers. "Let's see what you're made of." I worked, handed out snacks, hauled chairs, talked to parents about Horizon's plans. The sun beat down, sweat soaking my shirt, but I kept going, Amara's voice in my head. "Don't screw it up." She was there too, in jeans and a tank top, her arms toned under the Georgia heat, her curls pulled back. She caught me lifting a table, our eyes locking for a beat, hers surprised, mine steady, before she turned to a kid tugging her sleeve. Naomi watched it all, her silence louder than words. Back in New York, Mia texted updates. "Lost 2 investors, but we're holding. You owe me big." But I'd made my call. That night, at a diner near the center, grease-stained booths, the hum of a jukebox playing Al Green. Amara slid in across from me, her Coke fizzing between us. "You skipped Chicago," she said, stirring her straw. "Why?" "You," I said, simple as that. "Your mom's test. I wasn't gonna fail it." She raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging her lips. "Mom's tough. You passed, barely." "Barely's enough," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not the guy I was, Amara. I'm trying. For you. For this." She studied me, her fingers brushing the glass, her tank top clinging from the day's heat. "You're still you," she said, voice soft but firm. "Just different." That cracked the door wider. We started talking. Real talks, not just small stuff. One night, after a mentorship session, we walked through Prospect Park, the Brooklyn air crisp, leaves crunching underfoot. She wore a scarf, her breath fogging, and I kept my hands in my pockets to stop from reaching for her. "Sasha told me something," I said, risking it. "About you and some guy. An engagement." She stopped, her eyes narrowing, then softening. "Marcus," she said, voice low. "Yeah." I said yes, then no. Couldn't do it. "Why not?" I asked, heart pounding. She looked away, the park lights catching her profile, sharp, beautiful, haunted. "He was good. Great even. But he wasn't." She trailed off, then met my gaze. "I've learned to live without you, Lucas. Took me years." "I haven't," I said, stepping closer, her jasmine hitting me hard. "I've been half alive since you left. I don't deserve you, I know that. But I'm learning to. Not just for you, for me." Her breath hitched, her eyes searching mine, close enough I could feel her warmth, see the pulse at her throat. "You don't know me anymore," she whispered, but she didn't pull away. "I want to," I said, voice rough. "Let me try." She didn't answer, just nodded, slight, a crack in her wall. We walked on, shoulders brushing, the air electric with what we didn't say. Back at her place, a new spot in Fort Greene, cozy with books and plants. She made tea, her fingers brushing mine as she handed me a mug. We sat on her couch, thighs inches apart, the silence thick with 5 years of ghosts. "I'm not promising anything," she said finally, her voice a thread. "But, okay." "Okay's enough," I said, my hand twitching to touch her, but I held back. She smiled, small, real, and it was a lifeline. The weeks after blurred, coffee dates in Harlem, walks along the Hudson, talks about Horizon and Hayes Ventures shifting to impact investing. Sasha eased up, grudgingly. "You're still on probation, Hayes." And Naomi nodded approval at a Sunday dinner, passing me collards with a look that said, "Keep going." Travis's smear faded. Our lawyer shredded it, and Mia held the fort. But I didn't care about the win. I cared about Amara, about us, About the light I was clawing back, one step at a time. By the fall of 2026, the pieces of my life were starting to fit again. Not perfectly, not like some fairy tale puzzle, but real, jagged, and mine. It had been a year since that night at the plaza, since Amara Ellis let me back into her orbit, and we'd spent it rebuilding. Slow, steady, like laying bricks in wet cement. I was 36 now, still running Hayes Ventures, but dialing back the chaos, shifting gears toward impact investing, stuff that mattered, not just fattened my bank account. Amara's horizon, learning, was a powerhouse, stretching from Atlanta to Chicago, and we'd found a rhythm together, a partnership that wasn't just about us, but about something bigger. New York was home base that October, a crisp, golden stretch where the leaves in Central Park turned fire red and the air smelled like roasted chestnuts from street carts. I'd moved out of the penthouse, too cold, too hollow, and into a brownstone in Fort Greene, a few blocks from Amara's place. It was smaller, warmer, with creaky floors and a stoop where I'd sit with a coffee, watching Brooklyn wake up. Hayes Ventures still hummed in Flatiron, but I wasn't chained there anymore. Mia Carter ran the show most days, her dry "don't screw this up, Lucas" a constant over the phone. I'd learned to let go, to trust, to breathe. Amara and I weren't rushing anything. Didn't need to. We'd started with coffee dates at hole-in-the-wall spots in Harlem, her teasing me over burnt espresso, me laughing at her caffeine obsession. Those turned to walks along the Hudson, her scarf fluttering in the wind, our hands brushing until one day I grabbed hers, and she didn't pull away. We'd talk about Horizon's latest pilot, my push into education funds, the kids we'd met in Brooklyn who reminded her of herself, scrappy and hungry for more. Sunday dinners with her family became a thing. Down in Atlanta, at her parents' craftsman house, Dr. Naomi Ellis passing me cornbread with a nod, her dad grilling me about Knicks games over sweet tea. Sasha Reed still watched me like a hawk, but her "you're not half bad, Hayes" over collards last month felt like a truce. We'd hit Chicago that fall, a joint project. Horizon Learning and Hayes Ventures teaming up for a scholarship fund, targeting kids in the South Side who'd never see college otherwise. The launch was at a community center off 63rd Street, a brick building with chipped paint and a gym that echoed with kids' laughter. It was a sunny Saturday, the air thick with barbecue smoke from a grill out back. Chance the Rapper's "No Problem" blasting from a speaker. Amara stood in the middle of it, jeans and a Horizon tee, her curls loose under a ball cap, handing out flyers like it was her first day. I worked the crowd, shaking hands with donors, joking with teens about their jump shots, my flannel shirt sticking to my back in the heat. She caught me mid-conversation, her smile flashing as she waved me over. "You're slacking, Hayes," she said, tossing me a water bottle. "These kids need your charm." "Charm's all I've got," I shot back, catching it, our fingers brushing. A quick jolt, her skin warm against mine. She laughed, that low, throaty sound I'd missed for years, and I couldn't help staring. Her lips parted, her eyes bright, the way she moved like she owned the place. We'd gotten close again, nights on her couch debating policy, her legs draped over mine, her breath on my neck when we'd doze off to some Netflix doc. But we hadn't crossed that line, not fully. I wanted her, bad, but I'd learned to wait, to let her set the pace. The event wrapped with a speech. Amara at the mic, breaking down how the fund would work, her voice steady and fierce. "This isn't charity," she said, scanning the room. "It's a promise to these kids, to their families, that they're not forgotten." The crowd cheered, and I stood off to the side, clapping, my chest tight with pride. She was a force, and I was part of it now. Not the guy pulling strings, but the one lifting her up. Back in Brooklyn that night, we crashed at her place. Pizza boxes on the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of Pinot Noir between us. Her Fort Greene apartment was alive. Bookshelves sagging, plants spilling over pots, a record player spinning Stevie Wonder's As. She kicked off her sneakers, stretching out on the couch, her tea riding up just enough to show a sliver of skin. "Good day," she said, sipping her wine, her eyes soft in the lamplight. "Best day," I said, leaning back, my knee brushing hers. "You killed it out there." "We killed it," she corrected, nudging me with her foot. Her toes grazed my thigh, a spark I felt down to my bones, and I caught her ankle, holding it there. She didn't pull away, just watched me, her glass hovering, the air thickening. "You're getting good at this," she said, voice low. "The whole showing up thing." "Took me long enough," I said, my thumb tracing her ankle, her skin smooth under my touch. Her breath hitched, just a flicker, and I saw it. The crack in her guard, the pull we'd danced around for months. I set my glass down, shifting closer, her jasmine scent wrapping around me. "I'm not going anywhere, Amara. Not this time." She held my gaze, her lips parting, then set her wine aside. "Prove it," she whispered. A challenge. A dare. I leaned in, slow, giving her space to stop me, and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, her lips warm and familiar, tasting like Pinot and home. Then she kissed back, harder, hungrier, her hands sliding up my chest, fingers curling into my shirt. I pulled her onto my lap, her thighs straddling mine, her body pressing close, heat radiating through her clothes. My hands found her hips, the curve I'd memorized years ago, and she sighed into my mouth, a sound that lit me up. We didn't stop. Clothes hit the floor, her skin against mine, the couch creaking under us. It wasn't just want. It was 5 years of missing her, of knowing what I'd lost, poured into every touch, every breath. Afterward, we lay tangled, her head on my chest, Stevie still crooning, the city humming outside. "This doesn't fix everything," she murmured, her fingers tracing my collarbone. "I know," I said, kissing her hair. "But it's a start." It was. Winter rolled in, and we grew, together, not just as lovers, but as partners. Hayes Ventures funded Horizon's next push, community centers in Detroit, mentorship in Philly, and we'd work late, her sprawled on my brownstone floor with spreadsheets, me brewing coffee at midnight. She'd moved in by spring, her books mixing with mine, her plants taking over the windowsills. Sundays in Atlanta became ritual. Naomi's cornbread, her dad's stories, Sasha dropping by with wine and grudging respect. "You're not a total jackass anymore," she said once, clinking my glass, and I laughed, knowing I'd earned it. The real moment came in July. We were back at her parents' place, a humid night, crickets chirping, the porch lit by citronella candles. Dinner was over. Fried chicken, collards, peach cobbler still warm on the table, and Naomi had pulled me aside earlier, her voice low. "You're family now, Lucas," she said, her hand firm on my shoulder. "Don't forget it." Her dad nodded from his rocker, a quiet approval that hit me harder than any deal. Amara and I sat on the porch swing later, her bare feet in my lap, the air thick with summer. She wore a sundress, yellow and loose, her curls wild in the heat, and I couldn't stop looking. Her laugh lines, her steady hands, the woman she'd become. I'd bought a ring weeks ago, simple gold, no flash, carrying it like a secret. No grand plan, no audience, just us. I slid off the swing, kneeling on the worn boards, her eyes widening as I pulled it out. "Marry me," I said, voice rough. "Not because I deserve you, because I want to spend my life earning you." She stared, her breath catching, then smiled. That smile, the one that started it all. "Yes," she said, pulling me up, her lips crashing into mine. It tasted like peaches and promises, her arms tight around me, the swing creaking as we laughed into the kiss. Naomi clapped from the doorway, her dad chuckling, and Sasha yelled, "About damn time," from inside. We married in August, a small thing at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, her in white, me in linen, surrounded by family and flowers. No billionaire circus, just us, real and raw. After, we built scholarship programs, centers in Chicago's West Side, a life that echoed our old dreams. Hayes Ventures wasn't just profit anymore. It was purpose. Her brain and my resources weaving something lasting. One night, months later, we sat on our stoop, the Fort Greene Street quiet, her head on my shoulder. "You're different," she said, her hand in mine, the ring glinting under the streetlight. "You made me," I said, kissing her temple, her jasmine filling my lungs. "I was lost without you." She squeezed my hand, her voice soft. "We found each other." I'd started this chasing shadows, money, status, a name to prove. 5 years in the dark taught me it was hollow without her. Amara showed me real wealth, love, connection, the mark you leave when the lights go out. We weren't perfect, fights over deadlines, her stealing the blankets, but we were us, and that was everything. Hey, if this road from ashes to forever hit you where it counts, stick around. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's the one thing you'd fight to keep? There's more stories like this waiting, and I'd love to share them with you. Catch you next time.